Ken Bailey, as a youth, grew up in Upper Egypt, and he came back to the United States during the Second World War and went to school. Went to the seminary in the early 1950s, and then in 1955 he returned to Egypt, and for the next couple of years he studied Arabic. He didn't do very well in his Arabic classes, but he passed them all. But his wife says he was out every day speaking Arabic with people. He says that if she couldn't find her husband, she would go off into the streets and try to locate him. And invariably, he was speaking Arabic with somebody, practicing his skills. And very quickly, Bailey mastered Arabic, and he was able then to preach in Arabic, which he was doing in Upper Egypt between 1955 and 1965. The first 2 years of his time in Egypt was simply language study. And the next couple of years, and he was teaching literacy in Upper Egypt, visiting the traditional villages. And he said that he had an epiphany in 1958. He was in a small village, and he was in a church service. He was not preaching that day, but he was listening to another preacher, an Arabic speaker, who was a local pastor, preach a sermon on the woman at the well, which is in John chapter 4. Jesus comes to this woman at the well at noontime, and she's drawing water, and Jesus asks her to draw water for him. And the sermon was not a traditional sermon; it was a kind of question and answer. So the pastor says to the women who were gathered in the congregation, and men are always on one side and women on the other. So he's looking at the women. He says, "What do you think about this woman who's gone to the well in the middle of the day? What does that tell you about her?" And they instantly said, "This is a bad woman. She's coming to the well all by herself. She's been ostracized by her community." Also, a woman wouldn't go to the well at noon, the hottest time of the day. She would have gone early in the morning or late at night, but not at noon. And the fact that she's alone is very strange, because women don't travel alone in traditional villages. They travel in groups. So very clearly then, the women, on hearing the first part of the story, recognize from the cultural clues that Jesus or that John is giving in introducing this story, that this is a very questionable woman. Well, all of these points come out later on in the story, so it's clear that the women's interpretation was correct. But for Western readers, we wouldn't have gotten that interpretation from the first line or two of the story. And this is what opened Ken Bailey's mind to the idea that we need to reinterpret the parables, the stories, and the sayings, and the prayers and the sermons of Jesus according to Middle Eastern culture, because there's a layer of understanding that we're missing out on. That simple peasant people living in Upper Egypt in the 1950s and 60s saw instantly, and that we don't see at all because we're not invested in or understanding of that culture.